How should I tell my supplier that he or she puts me at cyber risk? Good question. Some of you might already have addressed a third-party cyber risk. Others not yet. But what is common for most of us is that we have outsourced business operation functions to third-party suppliers. And if you also outsource, this episode might be of interest for you too. Great to have you here.
Corporate integrity, fraud, non-compliance, and cybersecurity. Would you like to understand the root causes, detect threats, and take measurements to protect the most precious assets? As a leader, you need to be prepared and stay actionable in the event of an incident. Sonja Stirnimann talks in her podcast, The Human Factor, Corporate Integrity Matters, to leaders and entrepreneurs who want to have impact, foster corporate integrity, and act as role models. As an international expert for corporate governance and integrity, entrepreneur, and independent board member, she knows the challenges. Let her inspire you.
Welcome back to this new episode of the podcast, The Human Factor, Corporate Integrity Matters. You might be a board member, an executive, an investigator, an auditor, internal or external, in short, a corporate integrity leader, or on your way there. What we all have in common, we strive for leadership with integrity. I'm your mentor and sparring partner when it comes to corporate integrity with impact, founder of Corporate Integrity Concepts with the different formats for corporate integrity leadership, and the vision to protect and secure assets, reputation and actionability, yours and the one of your organizations. Why? Because corporate integrity matters to all of us. The pressure to increase efficiency is unstoppable. Either we automate or outsource to optimize how we allocate the resources. Third-party suppliers take on business operations functions, and with that, these benefits create significant risks. Cyber risks too. With outsourcing, the vulnerability increases by generating new access points for cyber fraudsters. What I see is not that the organizations do not recognize the significant risk as such, but often fail to implement the adequate strategy. And with that, of course, also the risk mitigation part of the strategy will fail. By saying that, the awareness of cyber threat is much better than a few years ago, but the next step, the ability to manage it, has room for improvement. It is another form of unpreparedness and lack of skill set an organization has when it comes to cyber security and cyber risks. One of the big questions always asked first when the topic of third-party cyber risk is raised is nothing else than responsibility. The ping-pong between outsourcing provider and customer starts. Who is responsible for the cyber security? The outsourcing provider assumes that the client is. Here, the organization who buys the service has its own cybersecurity measurements implemented and is sufficiently protected. But the customer buying from the outsourcing provider has a different expectation towards the provider. The provider will also have vendors with potential access to data and maybe also to the sensitive data of the outsourcing company. The answer is not easily given by achieving compliance. It needs more to address existing and new threats. By just relying on compliance would in many organizations create a false sense of security, far away of protecting the crown jewels. Protection and preparation are needed within the process as such. We must protect against risk or threat we are already aware of and prepare for the unknown new one. If not, we stay vulnerable and will remain far behind the fraudsters coming up with new methods to attack organizations and gain access to sensitive data. The cybercrime industry and its exponents are constantly evolving and developing new methods and patterns. We, as responsible, need to understand how organizations can implement proper third-party cyber risk management strategies. Not only when it comes to our organizations as such, but also in close interaction with the outsourcing provider how they can increase the security for all their customers. There is hardly any day when I'm not involved in any outsourcing discussion. It definitively increased over the last few years in all kinds of industries. And the maturity levels are very different when it comes to the different outsourcing partners. But it is still not a topic taken up enough in the discussions with the providers. And what I see, often also not at the right level. As said before, it's not only compliance. In one of the studies recently launched by the Harvard Business Review, there were a few very interesting results I would like to share with you here. 71% of business executives surveyed say that they are moderately or very concerned that third-party suppliers are exposing their organization to cybersecurity risk. I think that's a lot. 64% say they have a clear understanding of the most harmful information that can be exposed by a third-party cyber attack, a critical step in developing safeguards. And 43% of respondents say they lack sufficient resources to adequately monitor and manage their suppliers. What about you and your organization? Are you part of the 71% concerned? And would you know what the most critical or sensitive information could be lost if the outsourcing provider is attacked? There are many other questions to be answered. In my opinion, third-party cyber risk matters to all of us being responsible with and for an organization. Today, I will not go into too many details of the study mentioned before, but I would rather like to focus on what can be done and how can we address the topic. And it's no surprise that it all starts with the relationship between the outsourcing service provider and the customer. Boosting the relationship with this outsourcing provider is key. As already mentioned before, boosting cyber defense through third-party providers is not only about compliance, technology, and processes. It's primarily the relationship and trust between the involved parties. Trust can be nurtured by transparency and the appropriate communication and include the following parts, but as always, not only. So know your outsourcing provider. How much do we know about our business partner having access to our sensitive data? A proper due diligence is needed for all the outsourcing partners before finalizing the contract, granting access to data, and the onboarding within the company's environment. By conducting the due diligence, the necessary skills that needs to be involved, which means someone who has a deeper understanding of the IT architecture and security implemented in the organization. The next one is the selection procedure criteria. It all starts already during the selection procedure, during the process of outsourcing to any provider. A proper due diligence with the right questions and analysis when it comes to cybersecurity is crucial. In many cases, not yet in place. The red flags during the initial sales process from the provider is important to get an understanding what priority cybersecurity has and how serious they are about it. Cybersecurity must be seen as a critical pillar for every outsourcing provider. They will discover vulnerabilities and immediately remediate it. Another criterion to take up is how the suppliers react towards input and questions from the customers with regards to cybersecurity. What are the experience from other customers? How did the outsourcing provider manage an incident in the past? What was the communication with the stakeholder like? And in which time frame? Answers to that would give a better understanding of the maturity level such a provider already has when it comes to cyber security. It also shows how they protect and prepare themselves, but also the customers. Another element is establish effective agreements. Linking information security to a service level agreement is key. if there is a high level of risk with an outsourcing provider, but also other suppliers, it is important that the contract includes procedures such as the right to audit. When it comes to the service level agreement, the security management and protection of the data should be linked with the right to fine them or terminate the contract if they are not meeting their obligations. For the outsourcing partner, it is a competitive advantage if they can demonstrate a professional cybersecurity management which pays out in the long run. The understanding of each other's business is so crucial, and it's all about relationship and transparency. Especially the outsourcing provider needs to understand in what environment the customer is, with having obligations to their stakeholders, which also may include regulators. For a lot of outsourcing providers, this is still a learning process on which they are right now. But also for the outsourcing organizations who first need to do their proper due diligence and state their risk appetite towards outsourcing services. They are both, provider and customer, responsible to protect and secure the data. This was the episode number 52 of the Human Factor Corporate Integrity Matters, following the motto Corporate Integrity secures and empowers individuals and organizations. Thank you for listening. My name is Sonja Stirnimann and I'm your host. Stay curious, actionable and a role model. Take care and goodbye. Would you like to learn more, meet peers and getting qualified? So visit the website Corporate Integrity Concepts or Corporate Integrity Academy. Or do you think this podcast could be interesting for someone you know? Sharing is caring, and we are always happy to welcome your peers to our community. And if you like this episode, subscribe and don't miss any of the future ones. The show notes are, of course, enriched with relevant information, and your connection via any of the social media channels is highly appreciated and will be answered. Promised. And please do not forget, topics of your interest or interview partners are highly welcome. Just send me a note on any of the channels you know.